Hello everyone, so here I am with part 5 this time of the race bike build. Now I'm back on with reassembling the bike. So in this video I'm looking at putting all the bearings back in, so I thought I'd get them all out of the way because there's quite a lot of work involved and there's a lot of bearings to put in. So I do the wheels, I do the swing arm, I've got the steering stem bearings, the inner races to put in as well into the actual frames. There's quite a lot this time. So I go through all the process of installing those and you'll be able to see how I do that. I've also got a few new parts for the bike as well, which I'll go through. So I've got a race harness made for the bike, which I'll show how that works and what my plan is for installing that on the bike. I got my front forks back from having them re-chromed, so you'll see the condition of those. They look really nice now compared to how they were previously. I've also got some parts back from being Cerakoted, so I'll also show you those and you'll be able to see the difference between those and powder coating. So yeah, there's quite a lot to get through, so I'll jump straight into it, but hopefully it'll give you a good insight of what's involved in rebuilding the bike. Cheers everyone. Just checking that it's going in level, and it looks like it is. Ouch. That's it. It's going in all right. So hopefully now I'll just listen out for the sound when it hits down at the bottom and gets into place. So onto this side now, so as you can see I've stuck the spacer in between and just tried to get it as centered as I can in the gap for now. And then I'll tap that in, and obviously you want it butting up to it, not ridiculously tight. It needs to have, the tube inside needs to have a little bit of flex because it does move very slightly, but that just wants to be seated in place. And yeah, same this side as the other one. So I'll put a bit of grease on just to help it go in a bit easier. Can hear it moving around still inside. It needs a tiny bit more. I think we're done. Yeah, there we go. There you are. Say there we go. You can't hear it, but there's a slight bit of resistance in there with that spacer inside, so probably all right. So for the front axle, I've got a spacer piece that goes in there between. So where you would have had the sensor that sits into this bit, obviously there'll be a gap now between there and the front of the fork. So what you do is you put one of these through, which bridges the gap a bit, and it goes on your front axle like that. So it makes up that inner gap. This piece on the end is just like a protector to stop the nut from damaging it, and my front forks as well, if you're wondering what the hell that is. And then there's one on that side as well, which again, someone's made these for me. So that goes like that. So what you actually have now is these outer pieces, which are the protectors for the front forks and to stop the spindle getting damaged. That's the original piece that goes through as the axle, and then that's the spacer bit that makes up the gap that would have been in there. And what I'm going to do is just thread lock it into place permanently with some of this stuff, so it just locks it there and it'll stay put. So when I grab the whole lot, pull the front wheel axle out, it will come out with it. Okay, so now I'll just leave that to dry, and that should be locked in place against that. And like I said, when you pull it out now, it'll come out in one go. It's weird with this because it does leave that gap there, look, on the inside. I don't know how well the camera's picking that up. But yeah, there's where that extra piece was. All you're doing really is putting that seal in to bridge that gap, but I don't really see what that's actually sealing, to be honest. Right, so I've just realised, and after checking with someone else, that you don't actually need this piece because it's doing nothing at all. This outer seal is supposed to obviously have that in, which I don't need. So for the purposes of racing with, don't need that in. onto the sprocket carrier bearing now. So same thing, just a bit of grease on it. I've tapped that in now, as you can see, and it's seated up into there, right in as far as it goes. So that's that piece done, and just the seal to push in now. So I'll just push that in, and then that should be that done. Okay, I've actually noticed a bit of a problem with this sprocket carrier. So as you've just seen, I put it in and I've just hammered it back out. The reason why is when I tried to then turn the actual bearing, it wouldn't turn. It was like it was gripping, the inner piece was gripping, and the bearing wouldn't spin at all. Whereas now that it's out, you can see it's spinning freely. I'm going to replace that now anyway, because I've hammered it out. But I think it's actually the fact that if you look in there, there's a tiny bit of powder coating in there, left residue, and then some in there, look. I thought it'd be all right. I thought it doesn't feel like there's a big ridge there, but I think it's just enough to put too much pressure on it, where it must be pinching it very, very slightly and causing it to stick. So I'm going to try and just very, very lightly sand that off, just that piece, and get it down to the metal again. And I'm hoping that sorts it. Same with there. That's going to be put in, and I'm going to use the draw bolt method again to put them in. So that one will go on the top, and I've actually found another one that fits nicely into that hole there. So I can put my bolt through and then sandwich that in together like I've done many times now, and put that in. Right, there we go. So it's just winding it in now. I already tapped the bearing in very lightly just to get it started, which makes it easier. So you can see it's seated on top of the bit of metal there, flat down now. So, and obviously the inside's working to hold it in place. So I'll take that off, find one that fits in just inside the bearing, and then squeeze it back down. And then I'll put the dust seal on, nicely flush to that. But you can see in there, I'm a little bit off being at the bottom of that sprocket carrier. So yeah, just need another one of these in my set, and I'll just wind that in even further. That's my set that I use, and as you can see, it's got every useful size you could possibly need, so it's really, really handy for this. So I'll just find one that fits. Oh, look at that. Spot on. Feels tight. Yeah, that's the one. There we go. Nicely seated in there. No hammering and smacking away at the actual casings. It just feels a bit more graceful. Ow, bloody hell. Just forgot to knock the spacer in. Well, I've started tapping it in there, but yeah, I forgot, so I'm going to put it in properly now. Just got to support the inner race of that bearing there, using something like that. Oh, hang on. And then on top of that, like so. And then I'm going to tap it in with that. There we go. So that now spins with it and locks into the wheel. Right, onto the next wheel now. So the first one's sorted, and exactly the same, just stick these in. That's it. I'm on with the first of the rear wheels now, so same thing. Oops. Right, that's that in. Sitting nice and flush. Oh, you plonker. Oh. I've only gone and forgot that. What an idiot. Right, tap it out. Luckily I've ordered a spare set of bearings just in case. I'm going to need them now. Got a few parts back recently from being Cerakoted. I think it's that ceramic coating stuff, and gotta admit, these look absolutely amazing. I was a bit unsure about how well they'd turn out because I've never done or never had anything Cerakoted before. This makes powder coating look crap. It's really thin like coating on top, but it's very hard wearing, so you end up with basically a finish like that. I've just put my greasy fingerprints in there, but yeah, you get a nice smooth finish, and it actually looks better than what it did when it was brand new. So I've had obviously the yoke's done, top and bottom, and as you can see, even the thread at the top has been done, which I was a bit worried about, because I thought, well, normally you don't obviously coat with threads and stuff, but if you look, the nut threads on nice and easy still. It's that thin that doesn't affect the nut being threaded on, whereas powder coating obviously would do. So yeah, pretty impressed with them. So next bit is obviously start getting this stuff put back together, but it has made me consider, do I get other bits like this done now? So I know there's obviously absolutely no benefit of, you know, coating that, other than it just looks nicer. There's not really anything to it. It's not going to rust because it's aluminium, so yeah, there's not really any benefit to it. It'll just would look nicer. So I am tempted, so I don't know, I'll have a think about it. I could obviously do the calipers front and back. I could obviously do the master cylinder. There's a few other bits like now that I'm thinking, should I get them done so that they look, you know, matching, and obviously now would be the time to do it. Another thing I got back today was this race harness. So you can see it's a lot thinner than my standard harness was when I had it, well, when I took it off the bike and I was stripping it down. All the electrics have been removed that I don't need, so the indicators and the lights, all that stuff's been stripped out. Now obviously he makes these custom to the bike and strips them to the, like I said, the bare minimum. It's been shortened as well, so it now sits, the ECU at the back, or the main control for the bike, now will sit further forward between the frame, and I'll show you what I mean when I actually obviously put this on the bike at a later date. Got a rain light as well to go on the back, so that's going to plug into the battery box plate. That's it's like a joint box and a plate, which again I think I've shown already. So that plugs into the back of there, hooks up to the harness. I've got the ability to run this DRE shift sensor on the bike as well, so that'll sit on the yoke, and obviously it'll light up as I need to shift gear, and that's the plate for it. It's going to go into the yoke. So this will bolt into the front of the harness. He's made me up like a separate harness lead, so I've got a 3 supply on there, for one for the shift sensor, one for the COSO temperature gauge, which is in there, and that's obviously to measure the temperature of the bike. And then I've got a spare one, so if I want to be able to put up a lap time or anything like that, I can plug that in as well. So they're all, I'd say, 12-volt supplies to the front. Got my front forks back as well, so I've had these re-chromed, as you can see, and they look absolutely mint now, so I'm pretty pleased with these. I got them done at Dynasurf, which is in Cheshire area somewhere, but yeah, they've done a real nice job of them, so I'm really happy with them. Apparently now it's actually slightly thicker than it was when they were brand new, so that's always good, I suppose. So yep, next job with this then will be getting the forks rebuilt, and I can get that done whilst I'm waiting on the engine to be built and sent back to me. I'm on with replacing the bearings now in the swing arm, so giving that a really good clean out inside to make sure there's no crap or powder coating stuff left in here this time. And what I'm going to try and do, I think, is so that's obviously the space is going back in. There's all my new bearings, and I've got to get this needle bearing in without destroying it. When I got the other one out, I totally destroyed it because it was really hard to get out. So anyway, I'm going to try and use this, and with a couple of washers on it, put it on there like that, thread it through the swing arm either side, and then attempt to basically draw this. I'll show you with this one. So that'll be like that, and then basically draw it into the swing arm using the nuts on either side, and basically clump it together and close it together. Hopefully that'll make it go in without destroying the actual without destroying this, and I can put that in between, try and give it a bit more support as well. So yeah, I'll try showing the camera. It might be a bit of a faff, but I'll set it up and then I'll show how I've ground it in. Okay, so what I've got is an M12 threaded rod running all the way through it, an M12 nut, a small washer that's just the size of this thread, these big washer things here, and then exactly the same setup this side. There you go, you can see it. So big washer, small washer, and then nut. What I'm going to try to do is wind the two against each other to draw that in. Just give it a go. Right, so that's fully in. What I'll now try to do is see if I can find a washer that's just smaller than this inner tube to push it just in that little remaining bit. Seems to be going okay so far. Oh, I left that in just to try and give it a bit more stability so it didn't try and, you know, twist as I push it in, as I wind it in, but that's gone in all right so far. Right, so I've gone through my stash of penny washers and found one that fits the diameter of that. Right, so I think that's in as far as it should be. It's seated up until there's a little ridge there, so I've just got to put the dust seal in now, and then obviously the spacer in as well, and then I'll do the other side. I think I'll do the bearings the same way by winding them in rather than hammering them on this, just because I don't want to damage that at all. Right then, this time to do the bearing on this side, which are these, you can see they're open, so you need to obviously pat them with a bit of bearing grease. So I'll do that first, and then I'm going to use this, which is from my bearing driver set, and that seems to be exactly the same size as that, and it fits an M12 hole through, so I got lucky with that. So I'll use that, basically thread that on, and then do the same principle, wind it in. Right, so I've just had to put it on the floor just to make it easier to keep over it. I could do with a second pair of hands, sorry. Obviously I haven't got one. So I've just switched that out for a thicker washer as well, just to get it in there till it gets in and flat, and then I can switch that out for a different washer. Right, so that's fully in. I'll wind that back out, switch it for the other smaller washer like I said previously, and then get it bedded into the bottom of that tube. So that's the first bearing inside. I don't know how well you can actually see that, but it's set up to the base of the ridge where it should sit, and up to the space that's inside. So I'm just going to do the same, wind the other one on top of it, and then dust seal on top, and that should be it. Just used a pair of these circlip pliers and stuck the circlip back in. You can see it in there, look. Just a case of pushing this in now, tapping that in, and then inserting the small collar which goes in there, and that's it, done. So now it's time to have a go at putting these bearing races in. This is the part I've been dreading. I don't know what it is about it, just seems to make me a little bit anxious trying to put these things in. I suppose it's because I've got one shot at it, and if I mess it up it's going to be a bit of a pain in the ass to get it back out again. So I've got my bearing sets, and that's the bearing race. You can see it's like a coned, I don't know how you describe it, it slopes inwards, maybe is a better way of saying it, and obviously the bearing sits inside that and then obviously turns in it. So yeah, I'm going to be sticking it into there. There's different ways I suppose you could do it. I've been asking around what people have said. I think a lot of them tend to, there's a tool you can get which is like a cone shape as well, it goes in it and then sits in the outer edge and you tap that in. Other way you could do it, which I've seen, and probably the way I'm going to try it, is using my drift again, putting that over the top and tap it in the same way. I just have to make sure I'm tapping only on this outer edge and obviously nothing on the inside to scratch it. But what I was going to think of trying doing first, which I looked in the Haynes manual, it suggests this as it says that it's their preferred method, is to use my draw bolt again. Right, so probably got one shot at getting this right. Just trying to level it out. just so when I'm tapping it in, it's going in straight. Got it seated, you can just see bearing there, and I could have tapped it down, but I just find this is easier to get it straight because it obviously squeezes it equally at each side as long as you've got it started straight. And then at the bottom, exactly the same. Like I said, that bit there is just to stop it scratching the inner piece as I wind it together and sandwich it in. Probably picked the most awkward spot in the garage to do this. Okay, I put another bearing driver on this time, slightly smaller, and it fits just inside the lip, just small enough to get inside to hopefully wind this in. So I'm hoping I can just wind it all the way down now so it hits the bottom. So that's that piece nicely in. Obviously that needs greasing up, but seems to be running around smoothly. There's no like catching pieces or anything. So anyway, that's that one. Next is to do the opposite side exactly the same, and I'm hoping that one will be easier. Right, so I'm at the outer edge of the frame now, so that's gone in quite nicely. So I'm going to start using that draw bolt idea and squeeze it in from the other side. Well, that one's gone in quite nicely. That was actually the easier of the two, just because it doesn't have as far as going, I guess. I'm quite pleased with that, because that's been one that's been bothering me about a job to do, just because I've never done it and I wasn't sure how easy these would be to get in without, like I say, damage them, because once they're in, they're not easy to get out. So yeah, quite pleased with that. Fitted these lock stops onto the bike as well. Yeah, they are literally just a rubber door stop. If you end up in a crash and the yokes are on here moving back and forth, the idea is to stop them from swinging around so far that they not just damage the frame, but you've got to think the tanks here and stuff, they can slap about and damage, like I say, parts of the bike. That's what they're there for, basically, to try and stop that happening. Drill it, put a Rivnut in and screw them in. They're on both sides, as you can see. You won't see them though, because obviously the yokes will be there, so it's just literally if I have a crash, and like I said, with it being a race bike, that's likely, so it hopefully will reduce damage. That's the yoke, top yoke built back up. Looks better than it was when it was new. So I'm pretty happy with that. So that's those spacers that I've pointed out in previous videos that obviously fitted in place, that someone helped make for me. And then it's just got the original bolts back through after being coated, as I've just shown. So yeah, looks good now. Ready to fit the steering stem bearing now, the lower piece anyway, so that's this bit. I think this is a bit of an upgrade on the standard one, because it's got these roller sort of needle bearings rather than loose round ones, which I think the standard one has. So the way I'm going to do this, I've just been looking in the manual, there's a few different ways they can do it, but I think the smoothest way I think of doing it is to obviously, well, first of all, put that on so that sits in place where it should, like so. And then obviously the bearing goes on, obviously grease it all up first, and then I managed to find this piece of tube on eBay, and it's just the same diameter there as that inner race is there. So hopefully I can put that over the top like that, and then using the draw bolt again, put a plate on top, something like that on the top of there, and then obviously the bolt all the way through, one on the bottom, and then sandwich the two together, hopefully push that bearing down onto that bottom yoke. I'm hoping that will be the easiest way and the smoothest way without having to hammer anything, because that bearing feels fairly fragile, because obviously it's, with it being these rollers, needle roller style like that, there's a little bit of movement in there, so I don't want to start hammering on that too hard, which is why I think this draw bolt method will be smoother. So yeah, I'll put that piece on first, the obviously the sealing washer. Push that on. So I'm just packing the bearing in, and the easiest way to do it is smear it all over your hand like that, and then literally just press it into it all the way around. So it's like quite excessive amount in there. I think that'll do it. Let's try and see if I can feel it turn. Of course it's hard to grip now, well, now that it's all greased up, but right, anyway, that'll be enough. Pretty confident that's going to be fine when it's on. So yeah, I'll put it back on, slide it on. I'm just going to get all the grease off my hands and then start pressing that down onto there. Put my tube on top, which sits onto that inner race there, and hopefully will stay put. I've got a little spacer that's just the thickness of this tube that's dropped down inside to try and stop that moving as much as I can, and that's going to sit on top of the steering stem that's inside. Then a washer on top, I'm hoping you can see that, and just a nut on top of that. So I end up with basically sandwiching it together, isn't it, and putting it on. Oh, let's move straight away. Probably easier to do it this way, just knit the two together. And then just tap that bottom piece. Right. So what I'll do, I'll just tap that tube so that it sits directly on the race on top. So now when I wind it in, it should push it straight, hopefully, and push it straight down, and wind it onto that, into where it should be. So let's give it a go. I don't want to clamp the yoke in the vise, obviously, and start marking it up. So, but look, it is going on, and it is going on straight. Go. So it's spinning nice and freely on there, so hopefully that's it. Mind the job this time, so I've been going around the frame and cleaning out all the holes inside. So when I've had it powder coated, you end up with, you know, spraying, overspray inside and all the bolt holes. So I've been going around with a tap, cleaning those out, so that now when I put bolts in, they grip as they should and they're not difficult to go in. You also notice all this black. That black foam is basically to stop it scratching away with the battery box on the frame. So I've got this battery box to go in, which will fit into there, and this piece, which is for the back, that'll fit on like that, and it basically will just get bolted down onto those Rivnuts that I put in, and there's the battery box. So see, now I've got obviously the battery box set up. These little things here are for the rain lights, wiring to go through and then poke out of the back, and then a rain light in the back. Obviously the battery box at the front, which is looking pretty nice. Obviously it's smaller in size than the original one, smaller battery, lithium battery going in there, and tidies all that back end up. Put in the Rivnuts as well, so that's all the Rivnuts I needed to be able to hold that lot down, and the fairing at the back will bolt through the actual fiberglass, through the battery box on that side there, and then into that frame, so that should keep it all nice and still. Like I said, this is just to stop it from scuffing. I've got one little Rivnut needs to go in there, and that's to hold the fairing on, so I'm just going to install it now. I've got this tool on eBay, does the job, another cheapo one, but does the job. I don't do Rivnuts that often. That's it. Just thought I'd show this issue I've got here. So as you can see, I've put in all the Rivnuts across the bike. They've all gone in okay, apart from that one. So what's happened is I've put it in, it's just gone in slightly wonky, and it's quite hard to tell as you're putting them in. So yeah, when I try and screw in the bolt, it doesn't like going in, and it's gripping, and I'll know it'll just snap inside if I try and force it. So what I'm going to do is drill that out, but I found a quick tip for how to get this out, and it involves using a countersink drill bit like that. So instead of trying to just drill it through, if you use that, it will grind the top of the Rivnut off. Obviously, you've got to be careful because you don't want to be taking it off fully and going through to the red metal underneath and then scuffing it up. Right, there we go. So that's popped it through. There's no damage to that, which is good. So hopefully now I can tip it and it might come out. If not, it'll be stuck in there. That's probably like the best I could have hoped for. It's not done any scuffing, any damage to the actual paint. You can see the imprint of where it's actually gripped the Rivnut in the first place. So yeah, an easy way to get it out. So I tipped the frame upside down and it came out. So there it is. So next time, hopefully I'm going to be building up the suspension. So now that I've got it back, I can start to reassemble that. I'm basically doing everything that I can to get ready for when the engine arrives. I'm going to also rebuild the master cylinder as well, the front master cylinder, and probably start looking at the front calipers, rear calipers, and the rear master cylinder as well. So yeah, next one will be all about basically master cylinders. If you haven't seen my other videos, I've created a playlist on my channel, so check it out and you'll be able to see all the progress up to this point so far. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.